The value of the video you post today is fuck all, but the value of that over 6 to 12 months is enormous.
Tom is an exceptionally talented content creator, endurance athlete, and entrepreneur who's killing it on Instagram with over 345,000 followers. He's all about helping creators turn their passion into profit and build powerful personal brands.
I'm glad we're talking through this story because I don't think I've ever talked about it, at least not publicly.
In this episode of the Content Era podcast, we dive into Tom's journey from his early days in photography to becoming a successful content creator.
You need to have a really strong why. It's like, I didn't really understand this until...
Tom also gives us a reality check about the struggles and what it takes to build a successful personal brand.
It's impossible to look at someone who only shares their successes and trust them because life is not actually like that.
What inspired you to grow your personal brand, Tom?
Welcome back to the Content Era, a podcast by creative entrepreneurs for creative entrepreneurs committed to growing the personal brand. I'm one of your hosts, Sebastian.
Jasmina.
And welcome back. And today we have Tom Noske joining us all the way from Melbourne, Australia.
Stoked to be here. This should be fun.
So this podcast is a good opportunity for us to interview entrepreneurs that have done what our audience wants to do as well, which is build a personal brand on social media. So let's talk about your early days, your backstory. How did you get started as a content creator?
It was probably less exciting than you might think. I don't think I ever thought I would be an entrepreneur. I don't think I knew what that really was when I was in kind of high school and sort of figuring out my life. But the only real thing I was ever any good at, or at least the only thing I ever received compliments for, was my creative work as a kid. It was kind of the only thing that relatives, friends, people around me, school kids, anytime there was drawing involved in a school project, I would get picked. Anything else, I wouldn't. So that was kind of, I guess, ingrained in me from an early age that I have something at least good enough to catch the recognition of the people around me in terms of my creative work. But back in, and I'm not that old, but even back in, the early, probably late 2000s, early 2010s, when I was in middle school and high school, the idea of being an artist was not really a thing. You weren't an artist. You don't make any money from drawing or painting or photography or anything like that. It was kind of just something that you did. And, the advice of everyone around me around that time was, you might be able to go and get a job as an architect or, a designer or, even some really obscure ones. I remember my old man was involved in motorsport and he was like, maybe you should go and become like an engine graphic artist that like draws up the engine from the engineer's perspective. And I was like, none of this sounds like fun. It just seems like implementing my skill technically, not something that I would actually enjoy doing. So I left school, and the only other thing I was ever any interested in as well was my, physical fitness, health and fitness, training, lifting, all that sort of stuff. So I went and did personal training for immediately out of school. I didn't really want to do university. My grades weren't good enough to get into anything I actually wanted anyway. So I went and did personal training for 2 years. And towards the end of that time, I kind of completely lost that creative side of me. I no longer spent any time drawing. I no longer spent any time doing anything that I felt was actually what I wanted to do. It was mostly just work, get too drunk on the weekends, and that was pretty much it. And I, out of desperation and kind of just hitting a point where I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and I kind of realized a passion for fitness doesn't necessarily translate into a passion for working in fitness. And I kind of, up until this point, had convinced myself that I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. I was like, I'm going to go, figure out a way to get into exercise sports science at university, and I'll be an old age student, and I'll eventually get into coaching at one of these teams or something like that. And I've realized very quickly that I didn't actually want to do that at all. So I out of desperation, I went out and bought a camera. And this was in like 2016, I went and bought an 80D and whatever kit lens it came with. And I told myself, I remember telling myself, I'm like, I can't get back into painting and drawing because it's too time consuming. But if I have a little bit of time on the weekends, at least I could go and do some photography, and that might, get my creative juices flowing again. It might make me feel myself again. And so I started doing that, and I loved it almost immediately. I was obsessed. I was able to sort of throw myself into learning something. I remember I watched all the tutorials and the really boring ones of like, here's all the settings of your brand new Canon camera. And they were brutal, but I absolutely loved it at the time. And slowly I started and did the whole thing of like heading out in the middle of the night to take time-lapse photography and doing all the other things that you do, and traveling up the coast in Victoria to take photos of beaches and all these sort of things. And slowly I built up a little bit of a body of work that I wanted to share online. And that's when I made my Instagram account that I now have, which was purely just an opportunity to share my work so the people I went to high school with wouldn't see it. I started it mostly as a burner account. I was like, you know what? If I start a new account, none of them follow it, none of them will see it. I'll be able to do this kind of off my own accord and no one will see it. And then again, very quickly, I fell in love with the process of publishing content and getting a response online, and then learning about brand and learning about building things. And that's when I discovered Gary Vee for the first time. And the idea of entrepreneurship kind of hit me smack in the face. I was like, oh, this is something I actually enjoy. This is something I feel like I could do for my future. And that's how it kind of started. It was very organic. It was very natural. And that then moved into the story of the last 7 years of, building up and then getting crushed, and building up and then getting crushed, and building up and eventually figuring out what I'm doing now. But yeah, the beginning was very organic. It wasn't kind of like I set out with the intention of building a massive brand. It was very like, I just want a creative outlet. I want a place that I can publish content and share the things that I'm interested in, which at the time was photography. And then that's translated into, what it is now, which is, insane to think about.
So it was really passion driven, right? With photography, how you started out?
Yeah. I mean, I would say passion's a bit of an interesting word, I find sometimes. I was kind of just following my enjoyment. I think passion is something that comes from results. It's kind of results driven. Like, I don't think you can, I had a passion for creativity when I was younger, but that was purely driven out of like, I would do something, I would personally enjoy it, but then also the people around me would give me praise, or, I would be rewarded for my creative work. Like in, my grades, or in the people I would be surrounded by, or in my family or whatever. And I think that creates that passion. Whereas for me in the beginning stage, it was very much just like, I'm enjoying this, I want to share it, whatever. And I didn't really think too much about it. I think my passion for brand building came after, when I really started to dig into it, and then eventually, realized that I enjoy this, and this is something that other people might see as work, but I get a lot of self-enjoyment out of it. I really have a passion for, scheduling content and building a content plan and understanding the algorithm and understanding these platforms and all that sort of stuff. I have a real enjoyment for it, and that's when kind of passion started to come into the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just following your excitement.
Yeah.
Love that.
I think it mimics, or it mirrors or parallels also kind of my journey and yours, with photography. Like I was kind of like you as well. I lived in Australia for 2 years, and that's before I moved to Australia. That was when I had my camera always with me because I bought it for university. And I was the same. I was like going outside in the middle of the night to get photos of the stars, traveling for weekend trips, getting photos of beaches. And for me, that's kind of where it started to, my passion started to grow. It was about just me creating really cool photos that I thought were cool, and eventually started putting them on Instagram. But I had no knowledge of like how Instagram worked. It was like back in the day when you just post a photo and have no knowledge of really how it works, and slowly started to build that out. But I'm curious, what kind of projects were you working in when you were doing photography? Like, did you do it professionally for a period of time before you switched to the personal branding?
No. So that was kind of a bit of a transitioning period. I bought that camera in kind of middle of 2016, and then towards the start of 2017, I kind of realized that I don't really want to be doing personal training anymore. So I started doing a little bit of freelance stuff, but mostly in like fitness and mostly in videography. So I had no idea about videography. I had no idea how to use a camera to shoot films, but I quickly learned that the 80D is not a terrible camera for video. So I started doing some video projects for some of the other personal trainers in the gym. I would film some content for them, take some photos, and then that would be used for marketing. I think my first job was like, God, it would have been like $100, but I only charged 50 and he paid me an extra 50 because he like, you know, you did a good job, you can have an extra $50. So it was pretty normal. And then I kept personal training all the way up until around October of 2017, but continuing to do this sort of stuff on the side. And then at the end of 2017, I took basically all the savings I'd built up from working full-time as a personal trainer, and I actually moved to Canada. I went and did a season in Whistler. Yeah, I went and did a season in Whistler.
No way. We did a switcheroo there.
We did a switcheroo.
I was in Australia when you were in Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Around the same time. That's so funny.
2017, 18.
Yep, exactly the same time. I was there 2017, 2018. Yeah, so it was awesome. And I actually got a job whilst I was there again as a, you know, I had the opportunity to like work in a bar or even be a personal trainer. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and get a job that is more in line with what I want to do. And I also kind of saw this trip naively. I think I had like 1,000 followers on Instagram. I was like, this is going to be the trip that makes me like, you know, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to do photography and it's going to be amazing. It wasn't, but I ended up getting a job as an on-mountain photographer for like families. You know, you would get hired in the morning for families, and then for the entire day you'd follow them. I would follow them around with my camera on my neck and on a snowboard, taking photos of them for the day. Not like freelance. I worked for a company that did this, and that was really fun. And I think that was like, again, another sign that I'm okay at this and I could do this. And then from like, again, building up a little bit of a following, like 1,000, 1,500 followers or something like that. I think by the time I came home from Canada, I had like 2,000 or 3,000 followers. I got back and one of the kids I went to high school with was coaching a rowing team. And he was like, come down. I know you have a camera and I know you just bought a drone. Can you come down and do like a rowing film? And I was like, yeah, no worries. And this was like, as I got home, I might have had like, from memory, I think I had like $800 left. I was still living at my parents', so $800 can go a long way. But I needed to either figure out how I was going to make money with photography, or I needed to go back and get another job, personal training. And they were like, come down, speak to the head coach. You can do some filming work for us and like, you know, see what happens. And I did the first film. I didn't even quote them because I was like, yeah, no worries. I'll do this for fun. And then we finished. The video was good enough that they liked it. And the coach was like, what do you want? And I was like, $300. And he gave me $300 and I was stoked. I was like, okay, I've just taken my net worth from $800 to $1,100. This is great.
Success.
So then I did like literally maybe a week later, they were going up for Head of the River, which is like the main rowing event. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to drive up. I'm going to make a film of the day of my own accord, whatever. And I went up and I filmed this video that I called Brothers in the Boat because I'd been watching Band of Brothers at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a film and it'll be cool, whatever. And it was like I think it was like a 2-3 minute video. And I posted it on YouTube as like my own, but branded for them. And it got like 115,000 views or something crazy.
Wow.
What?
Which for like a niche rowing film is insane.
Yeah.
And then that kind of, yeah. And then that kind of, from that one video, that school suddenly decided, they were like, we see the value in this, because I think they immediately thought 115,000 views of people seeing our school rowing program. How many new school kids is that going to translate into? I just thought it was cool because I was like, 115,000 people, this is crazy. And then I had immediately afterwards, I ended up shooting for that year. I shot 2 semi-professional rugby players that were trying to build their reel to send off to European rugby teams, which again, they paid me like $1,000 or $2,000 each to film across the entire season. I then filmed for 3 or 4 other rowing schools and universities the year after. I did a bunch of stuff for some rugby teams. I then started shooting for gyms. I started shooting for a few professional boxers. And I became like this kind of sports videographer. And then off the back of that, I kept doing that for that year. This was like 2018. So this was when I actually started my business and actually opened an ABN, which is like the business registration and all that sort of stuff. And immediately, I think that year I replaced my income as a personal trainer, which is not a lot of money, but it was like, I think it equated to like 60 to 65,000 Australian dollars that year in freelance projects, which I was stoked. Like I didn't really understand what entrepreneurship was the year before. And then now I've made a full-time income off my own back, which I thought was awesome. And then during that year as well, I started doing some weddings and wedding videography and all that sort of jazz and whatnot. And then 2019 was actually like, to make a long story really short, or make a long story slightly less long, I basically accidentally stumbled into freelance videography. So I didn't actually do any monetization of my Instagram following. That was never even an intention. It was like, I'm just doing this for fun. And then I just so happened to do videography on the side. So I've been full-time since day one, but my full-time has looked like a lot of different things over that period. Sometimes it's been freelance work. Sometimes it's been doing a little bit of other stuff. In 2019, I got a job as an editor for a production company because I was like, I want to learn how productions actually work. Like I got to work on, I think I was on set once in 2019. I remember I was on set for like a rerun of some massive famous Australian TV show. And it was like me and another mate who like somehow got this job. And it was like disgusting how out of place we were. The producer was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, and he'd just say things at us and neither of us knew what we were doing. It was just like, I don't know. And then we'd have to ask like what he meant by certain words. Like I didn't know what a gaffer was. He was like, can you take such and such card to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't fucking have any idea what you've just said. It was
It's the best
crazy,
way to learn though, isn't it? Learn while you earn.
It is. So there was a lot of craziness during that time. But it all happened, I don't want to say quickly because during like, it's not, that's not a lot of money. But it's enough to kind of prove to myself that I can make money off my own back, which I think is something that stops a lot of people because it is kind of an intimidating idea it's a really intimidating idea to know like, oh, I've got to make every single dollar myself. And that can be really difficult. And then you see so many people, I guess I'm glad we're talking through this story because I don't think I've ever talked about it, at least not publicly. It's hard to look at,
You heard it here first, folks.
Exactly. It's an exclusive, but it's hard to look at people who are doing really well and bridge the gap between where you are, not really understanding how you're even going to make $1 and then see someone making millions. And it's like, well, I could never do that. And it's like, you don't have to do that. You just have to do something to start and then it slowly builds up into, what you eventually do. So yeah, that was how I supported my income or supported my lifestyle while I was building my audience on Instagram.
Oh my, I think you answered like 4 questions right there. But maybe we'll ask them anyway, just to kind of put an emphasis on it. And yeah, I could not relate to that last thing you said more, especially for creators, entrepreneurs in like the beginning stages, right? We're just grinding away, not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And what we are seeing though is all these massive, successful creators online, and the comparison kicks in, imposter syndrome kicks in. But yeah, like you said, you don't need to do exactly what they're doing. Like everyone's journey and path is their own. So as long as you're doing something, chipping away at it. So what inspired you to grow your personal brand, Tom?
So I didn't realize until later. I did kind of so my whole reason for building or wanting to do Instagram initially was like, I saw Peter McKinnon. I stumbled across him when I was obviously researching cameras and researching what lenses to buy and like learning about my camera, and he had videos on the ADD and all that sort of stuff. And I stumbled across him, and he was kind of the first person I'd ever seen that was making a good income off his creative work. I was like, this is amazing. He's kind of doing something valuable, or at least like creating something and then putting it out into the world, and he's making a full-time income from it. And this sort of circles back to when I was really young, or not even really young, but like in my early teens, I watched a lot of YouTube. I didn't really watch TV, or I was not like a Simpsons kid or Family Guy or anything like that. It was like I watched like early YouTubers when I was, 12, 13, 14, 15. And some of those people were like fitness influencers and vloggers and like PewDiePie and these people that were like around in like 2009, 2010. And I always saw them as really fascinating, but I didn't really understand that they were making a lot of money. And then also I didn't really understand that they didn't start like that. I always saw them as like entertainers, the same way you would see an actor on TV. I was like, these are people who, have something that I don't. But I always admired it. I was like, this is really cool that they get to do this as their job. But I didn't really understand it enough for me to want to throw my hat in the ring. And then when I saw Peter McKinnon, it kind of like bridged that gap for me, where I was like, oh, Peter's just a normal dude who has a passion for videography and photography, who has done this. And that was the first time where it kind of clicked, where I was like, you know what? Well, if he can do it, I can do it too. And that was kind of the bridge to go and start posting on Instagram and try to grow an audience on there. So that was kind of why I started. But then I very quickly realized I didn't have the confidence to be on camera. That was not something it was completely impossible. The idea of doing this now is insanity back then. Like I just didn't have, I'm a very, at the time I was a very insecure person. I'm a massive introvert. Like it was impossible. The idea
I can
of it
fully relate to that.
No chance. So the idea of being behind camera and posting photography was great, but I very quickly realized that makes you a very one-dimensional creator, and it kind of completely eliminates your ability to talk about everything that you want to talk about. So I would try to like write these long captions, and people would be like, this is awesome that you've written about this and all that sort of stuff. And I'd try to share things there, and people appreciated it, but it was always like, it didn't really work. And then sometimes I'd post a photo of like myself or something that was going on, and it would just get donuts. Like there'd be no one, like I'd have an audience of, at the time, like 20, 30, 40,000 followers. And I'd normally get 10, 15, 20,000 likes a post on my photography. And I'd post a photo of me and it'd barely scrape over 100 likes, and it'd be completely crippling. I'm like, this is fucked. Like it made me feel like no one was there for me, which is like a very selfish thing to say, but that was always kind of the goal in the beginning. I was like, I wanted to build something around me because I followed those people for years. I admired what they were doing, and that was something that I really looked up to. So then I obviously had my whole bout of massive burnout and kind of quit in 2021. And then when I came back in 2022 and decided to try this again, I was like, I'm just going to do this exactly how I want to do it. I don't really give a fuck about niches anymore. I don't care about photography. I don't care about any particular thing. It's just, I'm just going to do this, and I don't really care what happens. Like my mindset at the time was very much, I'm never going back to doing digital art or doing photography. Like that's not happening. So that option's not there. So there's no world where I'm just going to keep trying to make that successful. So that's completely eliminated. And then I was like, I don't really want to go get a job, but that option's there. And then the only in between was like, stop caring at all about everything and just make whatever you want and see what happens. And if it doesn't work by the time you run out of money, you can always go get a job. So it was really like, it wasn't even when I decided to stop making and start talking to camera and start sharing everything and doing the nicheless thing. It wasn't like this intentional thing. It was just like, I fucking hate what I was doing before. And I know where that leads you, where you do something. If you pick one lane, we grow up as human beings. We become different people. So if you don't have the flexibility to grow with your brand has a shelf life. Like it's only going to last as long as you're interested in that thing. And there is nothing more crippling than not liking the thing that your business runs on. It's a complete impossibility. Like business is, the irony of being an entrepreneur is like people think it's like freedom and money and lifestyle. And it's like, it's not those things at all. Like obviously to a certain extent, like money can create that lifestyle, but it's really hard. And if you don't enjoy what you're doing, it's completely unsustainable. Like you have a shelf life. And I think especially right now, there's a lot of creators who are kind of trying to be something or trying to be a version of themselves that they think is suitable for the time now without realizing that this space moves faster than you could possibly imagine. So all of us at some point are going to have the rug ripped out from underneath us and we're going to have to evolve into the new version of whatever social media is. I've seen it happen like 3 or 4 times now across the 7 years I've been doing this. And there's a lot of new creators who don't know that's coming and they're kind of a version of themselves that they don't even really like. And suddenly it's going to stop working and they're going to be left with a brand they don't like that's not working anymore. And it's like,
can you give us an example? Do you mean like, for example, before Reels came in, it was just a photo sharing app. And then all of a sudden, hey, you have to become a filmmaker in a way or a video creator.
The two pivotal examples are like chronological. So like when I first started in 2016, the feed was chronological. So you literally could post and every single person who followed you who was awake and on Instagram at that time would see it. So it was like predictable. You could go, I'm going to post at 4 p.m. because I know 85% of my followers are on Instagram at 4 p.m. I'm going to get 85% of my follower engagement at that time. And people would blow up. That's why I was able to get like I said, 10 to 20,000 likes on an account with 20 to 30,000 followers. That was normal.
That is unheard of now, pretty much.
That would, completely unheard of. And literally overnight, Instagram was like, algorithm. And then all of these creators I remember having friends who had 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 followers that overnight they were getting 5 likes on their posts. And these accounts completely died. And a lot of these people have not recovered since because every single time this happens, the whole space changes and a bunch of people are caught running on ice and being like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? Like, I want it to go back the way it was. Like, please change it back. Please change it back. And then the genie's not going back in the bottle. Like, that's not how this works. Right. So they get left behind. And then the second time was like, it used to be a photo. Social media used to be photo and written word. And then overnight, video. And all of these creators were like, bring back photos. It's so disrespectful it's so disrespectful for photographers. I don't want to dance on my Instagram. I don't want to make these short form videos. And it's like, again, dude, the genie's not going back in the bottle. So you either evolve with the times or it passes you by. And it's going to happen again. It's like 100% it's going to happen again. And I think a lot of creators, especially like, I speak to a lot of guys and girls who are like started in 2020, 2021 during COVID who don't know that happens. They're like, dude, I'm making $500,000 a year. My stuff is going amazingly. I've just bought myself an Audi and I've done this, and this. It's like, maybe think a little longer than the last 12 months before you start to think that this is going to be forever. I think I actually heard Gary Vee say this on Chris Williamson's podcast yesterday. And it was brilliant. He's like, do you have the stomach for the success that you've built to be ripped away and for you to do it again, because that's what entrepreneurship actually is. Entrepreneurship's not building up to success and then like sitting on your laurels and going, you know what, I fucking made it. It's doing it and then doing it again. That's why I love endurance sports so much, and why I draw such parallels between that and entrepreneurship, because the finish lines of races is the most lackluster experience you can possibly have, because you spend months training for this event. You're like, fuck, like I remember before my first Ironman, I was like in tears, having mental breakdowns during every workout at like the peak of my final 12-week block. It was like 20, 25-hour training weeks. I would just be on the bike, like crying, like being like, this is fucked. And having full mental breakdowns. I thought my life was falling apart. Like it was a crumbling to the finish line. And I fully thought it was going to be like this waterworks at the finish line. I thought it was just going to be this moment of like triumph. And I was like, I did this thing that's been on my bucket list forever. And I crossed the finish line and felt nothing. Nothing. I got there and it was just like, oh, right. And in that moment, I realized, I was like, the only way to get back to that feeling again is to do it all again and again and again. You don't get to this finish line and then it just is, it's not like there's glory and heaven at the end of these finish lines. It's just nothing. And it was really in that moment that I discovered it's the journey of entrepreneurship. It's as cliche as it sounds. It's like, it's all the things you do on the come up, and it's continuously finding that again and again and again and again that creates that success. So yeah, it's going to happen, and you kind of need to, not to be like all doom and gloom, but it's like it's a part of entrepreneurship that so few people think about. But I've seen it with so many of my friends over the years who have like built up a bit of success. Something's changed, or like things have tapered off a little bit, and now they don't do this anymore. Like it's not like they pivoted and changed. They don't do this anymore. That was it. And some of them's like the extremes.
Do you have any predictions for where social media might be heading next?
No, that's the $1 million question.
Well, I have a little bit of a guess. I don't know if it's going to happen, but with this whole, what do they call it? Apple Vision Pro and just, the goggles, basically augmented reality, virtual reality. I feel like maybe it's not going to be bound to just, our phone screens anymore, but it's going to be like, you're going to be immersed in it. Like you will be your avatar, and, social media will be like, you'll feel like you're actually in another world in
maybe
this
more
augmented
like
reality.
stream-based or something like that. Could be.
Yeah. I'm not really for it though, to be honest. I'm a little bit old school in that sense. I don't want to be bound to wearing something on my head, strapped to my brain for God knows how many hours. But we'll see. We'll have to adapt. So
yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah.
I mean, just like I think you hit, or I don't know how to say it, but like you touched on something that really resonates with us about entrepreneurship and having to start over again. Because Jazz and I moved to Mexico mid-2021, and we both had careers in Canada. I had a real estate marketing company, and my photo and video business was doing really well after being absolutely broke and building it all from scratch. And then mid-2021, Canada was just getting really, the environment was just getting really heavy and not really enjoyable. So, and then Jazz was in Toronto also with a successful photography business. And we came to Mexico and things just kept getting even worse in Canada that we didn't go back. So we had to like leave, partly by choice, to just, uphold what, where we stand on the whole topic. But it took away, or we took away that part, that backbone of that business that we had already built up. So when we came to Mexico, we're like, okay, how are we going to start, but leverage what we had before? And that's where kind of Awake Abroad Media really started, was how can we leverage like your photography background, my photo and video and marketing background, and somehow piece it together because what we had is no longer a thing. Like, and we had to adapt with that. And, you know, it was a tough time for Canada because a lot of people lost their jobs, their careers, their incomes. You know, you weren't allowed to work certain jobs and stuff like that. Thankfully, our industries in marketing were essential businesses. So more or less we're able to keep things going. But it was just kind of like a weird time. But I think that's what you're saying really resonates, is like having to start over again. And, you know, it's not to say that Awake Abroad Me is going to be the end all be all for us forever. I'm sure we're going to have to encounter another situation where we may have to evolve really and adapt and take those steps towards like a new path that's going to, you know, provide for us and build opportunity. But for now, it is what it is. We're enjoying it.
As they say, pivot, or as Matt Gray says, evolve.
Yeah.
That one stuck,
No, it was the same. I mean, it was the exact same in Australia. We were, I mean, overnight, my freelance business was completely eliminated. So yeah, it happens. It happens all the time. And it's like, it's not, it's not uncommon. Like, people think it's never going to be them, but it's like all the time it happens.
You kind of touched a little bit on, you started your personal brand, you know, found ways to monetize it. Maybe talk a little bit about that for, I guess, creative entrepreneurs or aspiring creative entrepreneurs who maybe are already showing up on Instagram, are doing the thing, but aren't sure how they can go about monetizing that whole world.
Yeah. Well, to start, to give you a one-liner that I think like not a lot of people, it's so simple when it's said, but so few people actually realize it. It's like you don't have, if you're like, there's a difference between building an audience and building a business. And if you're building an audience, you're not building a business. And a lot of creators need to understand that, like, unless you have a product and you are actively selling something, you do not have a business. And there's like this naive thing of like, I'm posting every day, I'm publishing content, I'm building my audience, I have this many followers. It's like, good for you, do something with it. It's like, that's not a business. Like, I'm sorry. And this is something I needed to learn as well for years. Like, I had 80,000 followers and I wasn't monetizing, and I couldn't understand how there were people like talking about having 10,000 followers and making $10,000 a month. That was a complete impossibility for me. I was like, how does that even exist? So I think for me, I initially tried to monetize with, I've spoken about this a lot, but I tried to monetize with a Photoshop course back in the day. I was like, I'm going to make a Photoshop course. I called it Photoshop for Content Creators. And I made this course going through how I make my favorite artworks. And it was kind of this, it was actually something I was really proud of. But it just had, you know, with the lessons I know now, I could have probably made it work or should have stuck with it a little bit longer. But in my mind, I launched it. I spent way too much money on it. I got like 20 sales from 80,000 followers. And I was like, I'm not doing this again. And that was kind of a nail in the coffin for me as far as that period of my life. But then when I came back, I've always been like really into visual creative, like the way things look. Like, it's why I've got this camera set up and this camera set up and the lighting and everything. I've got like 3 different lights on me now. I've got like I don't know if you can see this. This is from an overhead softbox.
Oh, wow.
I then have this light here, and then I've got like a negative fill behind, which is creating like the drop off on this camera, not this camera. So it's like, I've got all this shit and I love this stuff. So when I started posting again, I started sharing some like color grading things and some behind the scenes of like the way I make things look visually and all that sort of stuff. And those started doing really well. And for the first time, it kind of clicked in my head. I was like, there's product market fit here. I also happened to be at the same time diving deep on like bro Twitter. Don't ask me why, but that's how I first discovered like the Dakota Robinsons and the Dan Coes and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
And I blended these two worlds where no one from my world ever speaks about this sort of stuff, but everyone from that world only speaks about this sort of stuff. So I was learning the creative really well, but then I was learning all this like, how to use Gumroad and, monthly recurring revenue and all these different things that I had no idea existed. I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make a digital product. I'm going to make a LUT pack. And sorry, no, I didn't make a LUT pack. I actually made a media kit template, which I was like, I've got an audience of people that like the creative stuff. They're probably freelancers. I made a lot of assumptions and I came out with a media kit template and it was a complete flop, but it made enough sales where I was like, oh, I see what's going on here. This is a game of conversions. And I was like, it started to click in my head where I was like, there's not a lot of people clicking on this, but every time I get 100 clicks, I get a sale. So that's a 1% conversion rate. So if I increase the amount of people who are clicking by creating more interest, I should be able to make some money here. So then I came out with my typewriter animation, which is I made a motion graphics template in After Effects and then created it so it's usable in Premiere Pro. And that did slightly better. I think to this day, that product has made like 15 or 16,000 US dollars. So like not terrible. That's like 2 years of income, so not amazing. But again, it was like with that product, I hit my first $200 day and I was like, wow, this is cool. 200 times 365. This is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it started sort of sending cogs in my head. I was like, fuck, this is pretty cool. And then I realized, I was like, why don't I just make a LUT pack? Like I post these color grading videos and people seem to like them. And I've got my own LUTs that I use in all these videos. Like I've got a LUT applied to this footage right now. And in OBS, like I use my LUTs for everything. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to make this. And I made it again, just put it on Gumroad. I think I made it in put together a LUT pack in like a week and then made the landing page over a weekend in Gumroad. And immediately it was like I was like, oh, this is what product market fit feels like. I immediately skyrocketed to like 200 a day, 500 a day, 1,000 a day, 2,000 a day, 3,000 a day. And it just like climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed. But it was very like, for the first time I realized business is just a game of conversions. It's just about what's your conversion rate and then how can you increase the amount of clicks. Most people are really trying to figure out like, how can I make the product better? How can I make the landing page better? How can I improve my conversion rates? Where I was very much like, how can I just get more people to click on this link? Like, I don't mind if it's 2 or 3% conversions. How can I get 10,000 people to click on this per day? And that's when I started like really posting more, ads towards this. And there was one stage where back in 2022, I would predictably be able to get 1 million views on an ad. I remember I was like posting these videos that were like, I might, in my edit for this, I might overlay one of the videos, but it was like, I'd go through, my 8 LUTs in the LUT pack. I'd just be like, it'd be one clip of me walking into a room or me doing something. And it'd just be LUT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, buy them, link in bio. And that was the video, like an ad.
That was an advertisement?
Yeah, it was just a straight advertisement. And that would get like 1.4 to 1.5 million views every time I posted it. And I wouldn't even change it. I'd just repost it once a month. And that's
was that
when
like an ad that you were like paying for, or you were just putting it as an ad? It's like organic.
It was an ad for my products, but organic.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, completely organic. Yeah, I probably should mention. None of this was paid. I've not done any paid advertising to this day.
Okay.
And so anyway, I did that, and that built me up to like my first, I hit my first $50,000 month from doing that. And for like context, 50,000 US dollars, like prior, I'd not made more than $70,000 in a year, Australian, which is like 35,000, probably 45,000 US dollars.
Yeah,
so
it's like your personal training income there.
Yeah. So to hit like 50,000 US dollars in a month from one of my products was like stupid. It was fucking dumb. And I remember it was kind of like, and for context, when I first came back, the reason why I got into like, learning from people like Dan Cohen, Dakota and Yoso Rosado and all these guys is on Twitter is because when I came back in June of 2022, I said to myself, I'm like, before the end of the year, I'm going to have a $50,000 month, which again, like might as well have been fucking landing on the moon. Like it was completely impossible. It was something that was, there was just no way it was going to happen. But I said to myself, I was like, I want to make $50,000 in a single month. And in November of 2022, like however many months, 5 months after I said that, I hit 49,000, I think it was 49,630 or something around that, which just shy of the goal. But I saw that as like, holy fuck, like I said something and I went and did it. And then that became like just the catalyst for, again, the passion thing I talked about. That success became the catalyst of, I'm in full control of my own destiny. I'm in full control of what happens here. And then that led to wanting to make 100 and then 200 and then 300. And it's just gone bonkers since. So, and then obviously like I really felt like there was a gap where, because it's one thing for these guys who talk about marketing and they're these marketing gurus and that's their whole business is teaching people offers and all that sort of thing. I was like, that's cool. But none of my arena trust those people. None of them. Like all the freelance creatives, the people that are creatives to their core, they all see those people as complete bullshit artists. So I saw this as like, okay, there's a gap here where I feel like I've taken those skills and implemented it in a way that creatives would go, wow, this is actually kind of, I could do that too. And that's been my entire life. Like it really has been, my entire life has just been seeing other people do something and going, if they can do it, I can do it too, in almost every area of my life. And I don't really, I'm very thankful that I have that mindset. That's probably the one thing I'm, that and my tenacity is probably the one thing I think I am gifted at, is like, I just don't have a filter for what I think is possible. Like I see other people doing things and I immediately question how I can do it too. It's not like a question of, that's not possible for me. So I think I saw a gap in the market, and that's when I thought, okay, well, I could teach this and teach it in a way that's much more, from a perspective of someone who formerly saw this as a scam or formerly saw this as bullshit, which, I hope comes across in in everything I do. I'm still very much trying to avoid becoming like the marketer on Instagram. I really want to keep the me in it.
Yeah, I think you do a really good job at that. Just to give you some perspective, like when I came across you was through Jazz.
Through Instagram.
Through Instagram. And Jazz was like, hey, I came across this creator, and I remember you're like, I think we should join his cohort. And I was like, what the fuck is a cohort? And she's like, and Jazz is like she's big into self-development. I mean, we are both are, but you're big into like buying courses and hiring people and stuff like that.
If I can speed up my learning process, why not?
Which is good, but it's like
I'm the same.
Yeah.
And she came down and I was like, okay, like what course now type of thing. And I looked, I was like, fuck, this is another marketer guy, exactly like what you're saying. Like, I was like, okay, give me a moment on my own time. I'll read the landing page.
Yeah, I made him read the landing page, made him read the emails, the email sequences you've got. And I think you said
this would have been the old landing page too, which was pretty bad.
It was for cohort 5.
Yeah.
And I read the landing page and I was like, okay, this is not just like those marketing guys. Feel like this guy gets me, and I get the angle, and that's why we joined cohort 5, because it was definitely different. I think you did a phenomenal job at positioning yourself as that in between. You understand creatives, you've been there, you're doing it, but also you've learned something else in that business side, and you're just bridging that gap for people in a very authentic way that doesn't feel like it's in your face. I mean, some of the content that you have is very confrontational, but I think it, not in a negative way, in a way that makes you really ask yourself difficult questions that you have to ask yourself. Like some things that really stuck out from the cohort, a few quotes, is like, you have a volume problem, not a content problem. And to me, that that spoke a lot because it reframed
It spoke volumes.
It spoke volumes, right? It reframed the amount of time that gets put into any single one piece of content, and it zooms you right out to like a bird's eye view, to an airplane view. And you're really like looking at things and it's like, like my perspective on all of this has been so micro, not been seeing it from a macro level. And that was a huge thing. So to like see that reflected in the actual cohort from the content that you were sharing at the time, that really spoke to me, at least from a marketing standpoint. I felt like it was really meant for creatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, what I really love too is how you say you're really trying to stay far away from being like the marketing guru or social media marketing guru, right? And like, I mean, you do a hell of a job at it, because I can see how that can be off-putting for some people, especially as, you know, you don't have a traditional marketing background per se, right? No. And so you're not out there trying to like deceive people and say you do, yet you are also out there, you know, doing the thing really damn well. So it's like, how does that make sense? It's hard to wrap my head around stuff.
Yeah. It's actually not even to avoid. I respect those people. It's not that I distrust those people. I actually, since now, obviously, I'm like, well, a lot of them must be telling the truth because it worked for me. So I actually respect those people. My disdain from becoming that is actually more in line with longevity. And this is another thing that I speak a lot about. It's like, I know, again, like the whole marketing guru thing is a 2020 and beyond aspect of social media, with the exception of like a Tim Ferriss and Naval Ravikant. That's like the only two people, you know, maybe there's a few others, but most of like marketing Twitter, marketing Instagram, marketing YouTube are 2020 post. Alex Hormozi is only 2021 post. So it's like all of this is a glimpse in the long history of social media. So in my mind, I know that is going to be another, you know, thing that disappears off into the ether or transitions or changes or evolves. And I know that if I get too bogged down into any one thing, then that moment is going to pass me by and I'm going to be stuck holding the bag on something I don't even really enjoy. And my goals are far beyond, like, my goal is to be a Stephen Bartlett, Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan level of entrepreneur and personal brand. And I'm not going to get there by posting some carousel post about how much money my last launch did. That doesn't exist. Like, that's not what makes me that person. So I just knew from day one, I'm like, for me to both achieve what I want to achieve in the moment and also have the longevity to achieve what I want long term, I need to stick to what's right with me. And again, like the thought of this person gets me, this person understands my struggles, he is similar to me, is not a byproduct of me sitting down and doing some complicated like character assessment and customer avatar survey and all this sort of stuff. It's me just making content that I like and sharing from a perspective that I respect, and then going, you know what? I'm going to share this with the world, and then people who are like me respect it. The amount of content that me and so Daniel now helps me. It's funny. I'm all the way in like mile high. Like the type of content I want to make is like the video I posted 2 nights ago, where it's like, you know, your goals, you know, the goals videos, the 6 months from now videos, all the motivational stuff. That's the stuff I really love. But I do understand I need to come down and do the nitty gritty and teach people things and be in the dirt with people and help them actually like implement things and all that sort of stuff. So I hired Daniel, my copywriter, who's been with me for a while, but he's not helped me with content. And I hired Daniel to basically like fire hose ideas at me. I was like, just give me like the marketer of the market, like deep cut marketing content. And every now and again, like I pay him for 7 pieces of content a week. I probably use 2 a fortnight.
Oh,
because
wow.
It's like most of it doesn't really, like most of it I'll see it and I'm like, this is a good idea, but I don't feel like this is in line with my brand. So I'm not going to do this. And obviously that ratio is going to get better as we work together longer. but it's like, that's the level of, I'm very focused on maintaining that, sometimes at the expense of my business. Like, I'm sure Time to Build would be 5 times bigger if I just posted nothing but student success stories and, marketing tips and, Instagram growth hacks and all that sort of stuff. Like, I see people like that, and I immediately get red flags. Like, as much as some people might see that and go, wow, they're doing this and they're making that much money, my brain immediately goes, that's a ginormous red flag, because at the end of doing this is going to be a period where this no longer works and you're stuck doing this to an audience who only want this one thing. The reason why Tim Ferriss has so much longevity, like, he wrote the 4-Hour Workweek in like 2007. It's like, that's like, you don't write a book until you already have an audience. So he's probably been making content on the internet for 20 plus years. The only way you do that is with a massive focus on longevity. And he actively talks about this. He talks about how he doesn't do video, not because it's not optimal for his brand, but because it's non-optimal for him to do audio only, but it's not optimal for the lifestyle he wants to live. He wants to travel with a microphone in his backpack that he can plug into his laptop and do virtual audio recordings and then be just as good on Spotify as they would be on any other platform. He doesn't want to have to travel with a production team and have a set and a gaffer and all these other things you have to have when you have a video podcast, because he can't do it poorly. And it's like, he's very focused on what's going to allow him to make content for the longest possible time, because that's all this game is. Like, if you just, like, if you gained 10 followers a day for the next 30 years, you would be one of the biggest personal brands on the planet. But most people don't think that long. They're like, no, I want this now.
We're actually been running a lot into that type of mindset. I'm curious what your opinion is, but we do a lot of outreach. Our goal is to help entrepreneurs build personal brands on social media with content marketing. And our niche is specifically entrepreneurs that are successful in their business, but want to build a personal brand now that they have that success in their business. So generally, like, their time is tied up. And I think with the short attention span and the attention economy that we have now, like instant gratification, there's this really bad perception that people have that, if you're not going to deliver them 50,000 followers and like, literally, we had a call the other day where someone's like, oh, I'd like to be at 50,000 followers in literally like 3 months or something. And it's like, man, are you in this for the long game, or is this one of those quick things? Because if you want those followers, like,
why he wanted that though?
What?
Is because he was comparing himself to competitor in his industry. He was comparing himself
to competitor. So I don't think people really realize like how much time, dedication, persistence, tenacity it takes to actually successfully build a personal brand. It's about the consistency, and you really touch on sustainability, which has really opened my eyes on the approach of making sure that you can actually uphold all of this, and it's not just a short-term thing, or you're gonna go viral and that's gonna equal to thousands and thousands of dollars or success for your business, but rather like building that perception for people of who you really are as a person and how you can enrich their lives through the business side of it. So like if you were to be speaking to someone like that, like what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would try to get them clear on what their goals actually are. Like, I think at the core of, you need to have a really strong why. It's like, I didn't really understand this until recently. I was like, I thought a why was like, oh, because someone bullied me in high school and I want to prove them wrong. It's like, no, that's not a why. A why is like your North Star. It's the thing you're constantly anchoring to. It's the compass. It's like where the fuck are you going? And I think you need to get really clear about that, because then every decision you make can kind of be anchored to that question or that North Star and go, is this taking me here? Yes or no? And if it's not, then it's not. And if it is, great, you can continue doing it. Which is why I think for me, the longevity question is so important, because none of these people I admire it happened quickly for. Most of them, it's like Stephen Bartlett's probably the quickest, which was like 10 years. But Joe Rogan's like, God, he's been commentating in the UFC since like 1996 or something stupid, like since before I was born. So it's like really you really need to understand what your goals are and then anchor to those goals. And if these entrepreneurs, if some of them are like, you know what, I want to be if they sit down and they tell you genuinely, like, I want to be an entrepreneurial celebrity. I want to be like someone who's known for building this business and now they've got this personal brand thing going and they've written books and they show up on podcasts and they do this thing and it's like they're like an entrepreneurial, an A-list entrepreneur. Then great, that's an awesome goal to have, but that's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of PR. It's going to take a lot of PR. It's going to take at least writing a book, which is going to take a few years. It's going to take building an audience before you write the book, which is going to take a few years before the few years. So it's like, it's really establishing that why with them and then comparing it to their business and going like, okay, this is a new thing. How long did it take you to build up to your business being where it is now? 6 years? Great. Let's do that to start. Like, let's focus on getting to 6 years and then we can talk about this. So, but you know what? If they turn around and they're like, I just want to be, I want to have the following of such and such, be like, okay, great. We'll buy them for you.
Right.
Or don't tell them that. Just buy them on the side.
We don't recommend that, but.
But you know what I mean? It's like, you need to get clear on their goals. Like, what are the goals? What do you actually want out of this? What would be a successful outcome in 10 years? And then let's just work towards that because they kind of need to understand that there's no magic bullet. And then, it's so hard because you kind of have to like, there's so much kind of shifting and moving with what you do. There's no like plan you could write for someone that's like, you need to do this, and then if you do this perfectly, you'll have X. It's more like, do this one thing and let's see what happens. And then you do the thing and then this happens. You're like, oh, let's do that a little bit more. And then you do that, it doesn't work. You're like, okay, let's go back. Let's try 3 more things. And then this one kind of works. And then you do that again and again and again and again. And then it stops working. You go back 2 steps. And it's like, that's how you do this, really. It's just a constant game of evaluating what you're doing. Like, I've had students who have worked one-on-one with me where we've laid out a plan, we've done it, and it's fucking worked straight away. I've had other students where it's like, we're on our 7th iteration of the plan and none of it's worked. And it's like, okay, well, we just got to keep trying until one of these things works in a way that we'll be able to predictably move forward with. Like, there is a lot of, I think people have kind of mistaken the fact that I talk about this a lot, but I think people have mistaken the fact in my personal life, not on Instagram, but people have mistaken the fact that this is incredibly hard to do. Like, this is a really, really, really audacious goal to have. Like, a lot of people who want to be content creators and have a personal brand, you're telling me you want to make amazing money by being yourself and sharing your interests on the internet. That's like a 0.1% job. Like, both of my brothers are carpenters. That's what actual work looks like. Like, this was an incredibly audacious goal. Like, that's not something that you just get to, like, it's not like you get a playbook and you just do that and then you get to achieve it. It's more like you've just, again, back to the tenacity thing. You do the thing over and over and over and over and over again until something works. And then you keep doing that thing until it stops working. You try something else and you will succeed and then get your ass kicked and then succeed and get your ass kicked and succeed and get your ass kicked. That's the way it is. And that's not because it's like the world being cruel. That's because you have a very audacious goal. You want something that's really hard to get. So who cares if it takes you 20 years to get there? I think like you sometimes need to remind yourself, like, no one owes you anything. Like, the world is not, like, just because you post on Instagram doesn't mean you deserve anything. Like, just because you made a bunch of YouTube videos doesn't mean you deserve views. Like, it's up to the market. And sometimes the market will kick you in the teeth over and over and over again just to show you that the market exists. Like, it's the way it is.
I feel that why answer that you gave is, man, like maybe you've encountered it too in your life, but as I'm getting on calls with entrepreneurs and I dig deeper and deeper and I get to the why, that's I think something that I've been finding that not a lot of people have really asked themselves and gotten to. Like there's always a superficial why, and it's either material or status based or whatever, but and some of these conversations have gotten down to people opening up, almost being in tears and like giving me like a real reason why, like a true desire as to why they want something. And that's what really changes, I think, am I going to stick to it despite the hardships, and am I going to try things and test and get to where I am? Or is this going to be just a superficial reason why I want something? And, like you said, nobody owes you anything. So you have to prove it not only to yourself, but to your audience that you're here to create a relationship, to create community and serve, rather than being more self-driven and just kind of wanting it. But for what reason, really?
Yeah. No, the stronger the why, the stronger the will. Like, I think that saying is very true. I actually had a conversation I have a why that is very private, and I won't ever talk about it because it probably makes me sound like a fucking lunatic. But I had a conversation with a close friend of mine the other night, and we were talking about like this topic. And I told him, and he'd never heard it before. He's like, Jesus Christ, like I get it now. I fully understand. Like you have something that I don't, and that's crazy. So it is the stronger the why, the stronger the will. Like if you can find something that can fuel you beyond the accolades, beyond the admiration, beyond the money, beyond everything, then you're kind of like, it's like there's no failure, there's no setback, there's no person that could make me feel, less powerful in comparison to my why. There's just nothing that could.
Is it the Porsche?
In that sense, no, it's not the Porsche. It's not the
Just
Porsche.
kidding.
No.
Yeah.
Although that's equally as strong.
Yeah. And I think for that same reason, it's easy to get caught up on that content problem, right?
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I don't like the video, or I don't like the presentation, or I don't like how I spoke on camera, and really zooming out and looking at the body of work and sticking to that. Yeah. That's been a big one for me. And I think that's why we really chose that a psychographic versus a demographic, because regardless of what industry you're really in, it's what's up here and the vision you have up here that really sets the foundation for us to be able to work with anybody, really.
Do you have any advice for, those busy entrepreneurs who want to do both? They're busy with their business, but they want to really get on social media and start growing their personal brands, but they don't know how to balance it all. Is it maybe a matter of a workflow, a better workflow, a matter of delegating, or what's your recommendation?
It's a combination of a few things. There's no like perfect system, or there's no like perfect thing. I think the first one is like, the first two big movers are like, if you can afford it, hire people to do it for you. Like in most situations, like if you can get someone to come and film for you, do that. If you can get someone to edit things for you, do that. If you can get someone to set up your cameras and stuff at home, so you've got a setup to go, do that. Like pull that lever if you can afford to do it. The second one is like, don't start with what you can add to your plate. Start with what you can leverage that you're already doing. So like if you're a business owner and you spend a lot of time, I don't know, in team meetings or things like that, is there any part of your day currently that if you were filming it could be turned into content that would be valuable for people a couple stages behind you? So like meetings or calls or coaching things or whatever you're doing. I don't know what your clientele are doing, but it's like, is there anything that you're already doing each day that could be leveraged into, content? Because like the less you have to add to your plate, the more you're going to get out of this. Like if you can not change anything about your day to day, but hire someone to come and film it, and it results in 4 pieces of content per week, great. You've just increased the leverage of the time that you are already spending. You're essentially getting paid to make content. Whereas I think a lot of people think initially that content is something they have to add to their plate. Whereas most of the time you've already got content. I'm making content right now. And of course, this is content creation in your sense. But for me, this is something that I was already going to do today. But now I've gotten however many pieces of content out of this situation. So ask yourself that first, or the 2 things of, could you hire someone? And then what's the things you're already doing that can be leveraged into the opportunity? And again, the third is just like, it comes back to, why are you doing this? If you're just making content because you think you need to make content and that's the thing that's in vogue at the moment, then yeah, you're not going to pass a month. You're going to get a month in. It's going to be like Friday afternoon and you've got a videographer coming around and you'd rather be out having beers with, the people at work who are having knockoffs. That's going to be the first hurdle and it's going to sweep you off your feet. Whereas if you have a strong why and you're like, you know what, I'm trying to build a brand that's going to empower me to do this, this, and this in my future. Maybe you've got a business that you're like, you know what, this business is great. It funds my lifestyle, but I don't really love it and I'm looking for a sale. Could a personal brand get you more exposure to bigger opportunities that allows you to have a bigger sale and a bigger exit that allows you to then leverage in the future? Like there's all sorts of things that you can kind of motivate yourself to do this with. So really thinking, the third one would just be like, yeah, think about the reason you're doing this. Why are you doing this beyond followers, beyond like extra money? Because most of these people, if they're entrepreneurs and they have their own business, they don't give a fuck about more money. Like that's not something they're interested in. It's more, how can this make your life easier, save you time in the future, or just create better opportunities?
Yeah, and I think that's a big difference between paid advertisements and organic social media. And I think seeing that difference, I think really changes the mindset of the approach as well, because I see advertisements, they're a great complementary addition to businesses and to brands, but they're, in my opinion, I see them more as a transactional approach. Versus a brand, it's a relationship approach. And if you have a brand and you leverage advertisements, if you're at a good place to do so, then you can actually, enhance that brand, maybe get some more eyes or promote some of the products. And some people do that a really good job at doing that. But if you're going for the paid advertisement route, that's not going to equate to building a brand. Like you can't pay people to like you and pay people to want to have you show up on their phone or their social media. Like that's not the approach. It's rather building that know, like, and trust factor of people wanting to be a part of your life and you of theirs. And I think it's really taking that understanding of like you're saying, if your approach is more transactional or if your approach is more personal brand, like really, are you interested in the more money part? Are you interested in having more authority in your industry or your niche?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you feel about, or in terms of finding a niche? I know this is like a evolving topic, right? Because it's not like you just choose a niche per se, but rather as a personal brand, it's like, it's your personality and the different elements of your personality, and you're weaving that through your content. But like, how can people maybe start, if they haven't started on social media, to incorporate their personality or who they're speaking to, if that makes sense? Or
are you trying to ask, what advice do you have for people struggling, like nailing down their niche?
Yes, that's why. Thank you. Nailing down their niche, really.
I think you need to, you have to think about it from the perspective of like, who are you trying to connect with, not what content are you trying to make? Because that's a better perspective anyway, because it allows you to actually make content for the audience, not content that you think your audience would want. I think a lot of people think they're like, I'm the marketing person, so I'm going to make marketing content, but not really understand like, yeah, but who am I making content for? Which marketers like am I interested in? Which demographics of this whole space or this whole sect of, people's interests are going to be interested in this particular type of marketing content. So understanding that you're speaking to a human being first, not making content for a niche. And then as an extension of that then allows you to think like, okay, if I'm making content for a human being, then every aspect of them is applicable in my content. So if I'm, for example, with me, it's like I make content, or my primary business is helping people build personal brands in their online business. But most of my content is like personal development and a little bit of training stuff, a little bit of life advice, a bit of money stuff. Like it's a good mix of everything. And the reason for that is it allows me to connect with that person in areas beyond the exact thing that I'm teaching. And I think the really good example of this is I don't think a lot of people think about how their content is relating to their audience. They're just like, how can I get more followers? How can I make more content that gets more buyers or gets more sales or gets more interest in my products? And it's like, you'd probably want to feel related to when you're buying something from someone else. You want to feel like that person understands you or they've experienced similar things to you. And I think so few people actually even think about this with their content. So they're like, well, I can't make a video about my interest in cooking because who's going to give a fuck about that from my product in personal development or my whatever. And it's like, well, actually, by doing this, you might open yourself up to an audience of people who become a fan of you beyond just a follower of you. Like the craziest example of this that proves this a million times over is 0.4% of the entire population have ever done an Ironman. But every single time I run a cohort of 150 to 200 students, we get at least 30 to 40 people that have either done an Ironman, are planning on doing an Ironman, or have started training and are about to do one. That number doesn't make any sense at all. That number doesn't, there's no, the equation doesn't make any logical sense in that situation. But the reason for that is there's a cross section of people who are interested in endurance sport and interested in building their brands. And I am their favorite person. There is not another human being on the internet that attracts that type of person the way I do. So I'm suddenly, to that person, the only person they want to learn from. They don't give a fuck about some other marketing guru that teaches probably similar stuff, because they want to learn from me, someone who's had similar life experiences. This is why you connect with, like, sometimes you'll see a guru who talks about having, like, they might say something that they don't really think about. They might be like, I played lacrosse when I grew up. And it's like, oh, you were from a rich family. I don't really trust you anymore. Or the opposite might happen. And they're like, I come from... You might talk about how you come from a well-off family, and then it's everyone who's kind of in that situation where it's like, I was well-off, and then, I'm trying to build my business. Suddenly those people connect, and it's like there's other ways to bring people into your audience than just posting the exact type of content that you think is going to attract them into your products or being followers of you. It's actually about relating to other human beings. And me sharing, my struggles financially, me sharing, all the things that I've gone through, from depression to anxiety to racing Ironmans, all of these things make me more relatable to people who have gone through that exact situation. And I post stuff that helps people build their personal brand and run their business. So it's understanding that your content on social media is multifaceted. You're not just there to make sales. You're not just there to build an audience. You're not just there to convert people from likes and engagement and followers. You're there to relate to people and make them feel like they can, understand you and they know you. Like, one of the craziest things that I'm very proud of is every time I get recognized in public, it's the kind of person that I would expect it to be. It's like a fit person that's, they're a little bit older than me, usually the same age or a little bit older. They're usually fit. They're usually coming from a run or on a run or doing something. Like, it's normally the type of person that you would expect it to be, because they're usually exactly like me. And I think that's something that so few creators even think about. They're like, no, I'm just trying to grow my audience. I'm just trying to grow followers. It's like, to what end? Like, what's the goal here? Are you trying to,
Yeah, and that also speaks to the longevity thing too, right? Like, you want to create a brand that
is a reflection of you.
is a reflection of you, and that can relate to the people that you would want to hang out with in real life and vice versa.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we really need to step into a little bit more as well, because lately we've been about, educational content, some viral ideas here and there, just trying to help people out however we know we can. But while doing that, we're kind of forgetting that, we have some unique things about us that maybe some other people would relate to. And so maybe it's the lifestyle, maybe it's the travel or whatever it may be. So I think it's definitely...
This is why long form creators have such sticky audiences. People think it's just like time spent with them. It's not. It's really difficult to make a 1 hour podcast every week and not talk about your personal experiences. So when you talk about your personal experiences, people feel heard, they feel understood, they feel related to, and that makes them bigger fans of what you do. Whereas short form content, when you've only got 20 seconds once a day, like you're not going to fill that 20 seconds with, guys, I'm going through a little bit of a hard time. You're not going to fill it with like, here's an experience from my childhood that's really random, but here it is. Like, you're not going to fill that with that sort of stuff. Whereas when you make longer form content like this, we end up talking about things that are more relatable and more real and more personal. And that's why people stick to long form creators. People think it's like, oh, you spend more time with them. Obviously. It's like, no, it's not. It's because you actually know who Tim Ferriss is. You actually know who Joe Rogan is. You actually know who Chris Williamson is. You know who these people are because you spend so much time with them. Whereas most short form creators, you don't have any idea who they are beyond the 10 seconds you see them once a day. And I think I've kind of prided myself on trying to build an audience that's as sticky as a long form creator on a platform like Instagram because I share everything.
And it takes a lot of content, right?
Yeah.
Like you post, is it once a day or sometimes upwards of once a day, right?
Upwards of once a day, yeah.
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 And it takes a lot of content to build that and really contextualize. Sometimes you have to contextualize one piece of content with other pieces of content to really build a deeper connection that makes sense, right?
It's like what you said before. It's like zooming out and understanding like, okay, what's my body of work represent, not what does today represent? I think, so few people, that helps with like, one, understanding the value of your work. The value of the video you post today is fuck all, but the value of that over, 6 to 12 months is enormous. So really you need to focus on the individual pieces that you publish over a month, over 6 months, over 12 months, over 18 months, not today. But the second part of that is, contextualizing who you are. Like posting a piece of content that's a little bit personal, less edited, and kind of just honest, and then coupling that with a piece of content that's really tactical and awesome and valuable. And it's like suddenly that paired with that makes you a more real person. And then as a result, people trust you more. Like it's really hard to look at, I said this, I can't remember, I think I said it in content recently. It's like, it's impossible to look at someone who only shares their successes and trust them because life is not actually like that. Like life most of the time is a shit show. So if you only share like, dude, I've got these immaculate systems and my business makes $500,000 a month and this and this, it's like we all know those people on social media that only share that kind of stuff. And it's like, I immediately don't trust them because I know my life is not at all like that. Most of the time it's a fucking shit show. And I share that so people trust me more, whereas they never share that. So when they share, I made $500,000 this month, I go, bullshit. That's not true at all.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little bit more like, oh my God, really?
Yeah. But I think it's just, I mean, I've got a very skeptical mind, but I think it's just, you really have to understand that like what's real life like, and then how can you show people that you're a real human being that has real experiences, that is, has their flaws and has their setbacks and has their failures and, encounters struggle. Like it's really fucking hard to do. Like it's not this easy thing of just like, you can put into your notepad and go, this week I need to post a vulnerable piece of content. That's not really how it works. Like, it's really hard to do. And the more vulnerable things are, the less conviction you have to sharing them. My why, for example, is something I will never share on social media. But then like even little things, like my anxiety has been pretty bad over the last like 3 months because of the move and because of just life and stress and all that sort of stuff. And it got so bad to the point where it manifests in my anxiety is health anxiety. So I get really bad health anxiety. And like 3 weeks ago, it got to the point where it was like I woke up in the morning and it was I'm going to die, not I think I'm going to die. It was to the point where I'd sit down to work and my brain would go, you really need to give McKeely all your bank details because, you know, you're going to die soon and she needs to know how to get into your bank and crypto and all these sort of things. Like give her a rundown of all that sort of stuff. Like it would be to that extreme. And then that sends me on a spiral. But I'm not talking about that because it's like, how the fuck do I make a video being like, I'm really anxious at the moment and it's affecting my ability to work and all that sort of stuff. But if I did share that in the moment, if I got on camera and made a video and be like, you know what, guys, I'm really struggling at the moment. This is something I'm going through. People would immediately go, wow, this is a real human being I'm watching on the other side of the screen. This is someone who's authentic and real and they have real struggles and I'm anxious too. Wow, this is something I never expected to see. And I think it's so important to do that kind of stuff because that's what actually builds connection. That's what builds fans. That's why, you know, the biggest creators in the world are the people that get in front of camera in their car and talk for 30 minutes. It's like they're never the guru or the person who's whatever. It's usually the person who's real and honest. And, you know, Ali Abdaal is a perfect example of this. Like once a month or once every fortnight, he'll do like a life update video, which is just like 45 minutes of him talking about his struggles and the things he's going through. And it's like, that has no, like really, if you did a technical analysis of how to grow on YouTube, that wouldn't be in there. But that's probably the reason why he has such a massive community of like raving fans. So
it's the authentic content. I think in our really fast-paced world, the way things have been just going, I think authenticity is something that a lot of people they admire because I sense it. I don't want to like make like a huge generalization, but I feel like a lot of people lack authenticity in themselves. Like for example, when I ask certain entrepreneurs what the reason why is, like it's a hard one to answer because they're really sheltered. So really, like I think the people that are putting themselves out there, being extremely vulnerable, you know, there's always going to be things that are going to be private and you want to keep private, but being vulnerable with the things that can bridge the gap from a human being to another human being is something that's really, it's difficult. And I think for that reason, it's something that you can appreciate as a viewer, as a follower, as a fan or subscriber, whatever. You can appreciate in those people because you feel like you're connecting with them. And yeah, like that's the type of content ultimately that really draws me in as well. And that I feel is drawing the most people. Like you're saying, when people are driving in a car talking for half an hour, like they can actually retain that audience and have a following that really appreciates them because they feel like they're friends. They feel like they're buddies, you know?
Speaking of long form content, what would you do if Instagram shut down tomorrow? Would you get on YouTube?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I'm trying to figure that out at the moment. I have found so much, again, back to the thing I spoke about when I came back in 2022, all the success I've experienced came from like really genuinely not giving a fuck. Like it was like, I can't emphasize that enough. I know people say that, but it was like, it really was just like, I already quit. I can just quit again. I'm not doing the thing I used to do. So I'm going to do this exactly how I want to do it. And if people don't like it, I don't care. I never cared to begin with. So it's like this thing of all the success I've experienced was a byproduct of me genuinely just doing what I wanted to do. And every time I've done YouTube, it's always been like icky and for the audience and doesn't feel real. And I've not found a way to do it in a way that feels authentic yet, because I feel like the longer the script goes, the more I'm filling it out and the more I feel like there's a version of a YouTube video that I'm trying to replicate. It's like I've really not found a way to do this authentically. So I just don't think there's any point in doing that, because I don't want to grow an audience of people that expect something that I'm not going to do continuously. The only time I've ever discovered long form content that I really like is I did 50 episodes of a podcast in like 2020 that was just like purely, I was in a bit of a rut. I'd gone through a bit of a breakup and I just had to move back in with my parents, and then also COVID. So like I wasn't doing anything. So I just started a podcast, which was, it never got more than 250 downloads an episode. It was nothing, but it was like, for me, it was such an awesome outlet and I loved it, and it was so easy for me to do. It was solo. It wasn't like with guests or anything. It was just like an hour once a week by myself. And it was effortless for me to do that.
I bet it must have been pretty therapeutic as well.
Yeah, it was amazing. I really loved it. But it just had no place in my business and it was massively time consuming. And then when COVID ended, I needed to like do other things. I didn't just have endless amounts of time. Like I remember the real gnarly lockdowns in Australia were like, I was doing nothing. So all I had to do every day when we were getting paid by the government to stay home was all I would do is get up in the morning and train and then make my podcast and then make some content. And that was pretty much it. So it was like I had endless amounts of time. Whereas now I'm actually tempted to just turn my YouTube channel into a podcast. And then, sometimes do podcasts, sometimes do whatever. I don't know. I'm still very much trying to figure this out because it is something I want to do, but I need to do it in an authentic way that feels genuine. Otherwise, it's a waste of my time.
Well, I feel like the benefit of having a big audience on Instagram right now is that you can see what the market wants, right? Maybe do a little survey and see, hey, would a podcast style YouTube channel resonate with you guys? What kind of guests would you want to see? I mean, for me, I think it'd be awesome if you could interview like Danko or Ali Abdal if you have connects to him or whatever. Because, for us, like seeing two big creators that we admire and like look up to and who have really good stuff to share, talk together is really, really valuable.
Yeah,
but
very valuable.
Just my 2 cents.
There's definitely a period though where a lot of YouTubers were, it was, they kind of rode the trend, but in their content where it's like, I'm quitting YouTube and that whole thing. I'm not sure if you saw, but a lot of the YouTubers, the big ones that were talking about it, they were saying how they felt like they were creating content for the algorithm rather than for their audience. Yeah. And they were just trying to put out content to retain, to attract. And the reason why they got on YouTube in the first place was kind of slowly fading away because it wasn't really authentic anymore. Yeah. It was all about like keeping those numbers high. Otherwise, they were losing their paychecks and their incomes. And I think it's kind of like a strange thing. I think for that reason, we haven't fully delved into YouTube as well, because it's kind of like a job. And a lot of YouTubers do a great job at it, but at the same time, could really be time consuming. And you got to walk that fine line between being authentic and also catering to the algorithm. So all your effort goes somewhere at least and serves you in a way.
Also, there's only so many hours in the day. So
yes, there are only so many hours in the day. I think that's a kind of, that constant push for more. It's kind of, you have to at some point ask yourself why. And I'm just in a place where I don't need YouTube. And I think that's probably a good place to be. Like I had a conversation with a coach of mine and I was like, this was like November last year. And I was like, I really want to do YouTube. And he was like, why? I was like, I don't know, like it'd be cool to do. And he's like, no, why? Like, why do you actually want to do YouTube? And he asked me a few more times and I like said something that was bullshit. And he's like, no, bullshit. Why do you want to do it? And I was like, I think it'll make me more money. And he's like, he just turned around. He's like, that's not a good enough reason. I thought for a while I was like doing YouTube because I was like, you know what? Then I'll have AdSense and then I'll have affiliates and maybe a few sponsors and it'll be like a nice other income. And, I have a friend who's a YouTuber and he makes like, $50,000 a month from AdSense and affiliates alone. And then he's got like other things going on. And I saw it as kind of like this golden goose. So I was like, if I just do YouTube, it'll be like another income that'll be beyond this. And he's like, that's a stupid reason to do it. Why don't you just put more energy into Time to Build and what you've got going on right now? And I did that. And now it's like to the point where, I don't need YouTube at all. I could never make a YouTube video in my life ever again and it would be no issue. So now I'm in a place where I'm like, I want to do it. I want to do it authentically, but that to me means I want it to be something I enjoy doing and something that is like very low friction. Like I want it to be the kind of thing where it's like Tuesday at 4 p.m. I've got a ride at 5:30 and I want to crank out a video before I get on my bike and go for my ride that afternoon. I do not want it to be this thing where it's like, okay, I spent a whole day scripting, 3 days shooting, a whole week editing, and then it's like, for what?
It becomes a full job at that point.
I don't care. I don't care. Like I don't, that's not the life I want to live at all.
And how do you feel about leveraging it in other ways? Like for example, YouTube Shorts, or maybe even sharing your short form content on that? Do you think it would serve you at all?
So the reason why I don't is so few of my videos are under a minute long. If you actually look at all my videos, most of them are like 90 seconds to 2 minutes long. So the reason why I stopped, I used to do that. I used to share all of my videos on YouTube Shorts, and then my videos started getting longer and longer. So now it's like, I actually just can't share them on YouTube Shorts.
Have you utilized the 3 minute or gotten the 3 minute reel feature on Instagram
On
yet?
Instagram, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I was already doing 3 minute videos with posts. So you could always post a normal post and it'd be 3 minutes. Like some of my most successful videos in the last 6 months, one of my most successful videos on Instagram in the last 6 months was 6 minutes long. It was like a launch video for Time to Build. It got like 100,000 views and it was 6 minutes long.
Was it the horizontal one?
No, this is like a vertical. It looks like a reel. It's pinned on my profile. If you go to my most recently pinned video, I think it's like 5 minutes and 50 seconds.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, crazy.
So there really is a shift then, people are craving more depth, I think.
Well, yeah, TikTok is adding the long form now to the platform. Like they're pushing videos that are 10 plus minutes. So I'm actually curious as to what that's going to look like in terms of creators putting long form content on TikTok and what that content is gonna be like, because North American TikTok, I'm not sure how it is in Australia, but North American TikTok is like meant to make you stupid. It's not really like the type of content that they push is really mind numbing. It's just really dumb content, really. But there are some creators that are putting valuable things out there that are valuable beyond entertainment. And so, I'm curious how that's going to go, because now they would be competing with the longer form platforms like YouTube. Yeah.
I'm so out of the loop with like, it's crazy. It's my job, but I have all social media apps blocked from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. on my phone. And then from 6 p.m. to midnight on my phone. So I only have like a 4-hour window each day. I do all my publishing from Meta, Business Suite, and Creator Center for TikTok. I don't open. It's the reason why I'm so bad on stories, because it's blocked right now. It's like grayed out. I can't go on Instagram for another hour. I'm so out of the loop.
Wow, the self-discipline.
It's just because I knew I could see it taking control of my life. Like I was like, if I just spend all my time on here, it's just going to kill my life. And it's not discipline. It's because I have no discipline. So I bought the full version of Opal, which is like a desktop app, mobile app, which has a version called Deep Focus, which literally doesn't allow you, even if you delete the apps are still blocked until the timer runs out. There's no way to like delay till later. Once it turns on, it's on, and then it doesn't turn off. So for me, I've got that set to automatically turn on. And then on my desktop, I've got all of them except Meta, Business Suite, and TikTok Creator blocked until 2 p.m. and after 6 p.m. Because it's just like, I know that if I don't do that, I'm going to spend all my time on it.
You are on TikTok though, right?
Sorry?
You are on TikTok though, right?
Kind of. It's that, I mean, that app pisses me off because it's like, I don't know. I spend so little time on there, and then I didn't realize until recently Creator Business Center worked for TikTok. I think it's a new thing. So now I'm going to start publishing, but I just hated going on that app. So I would never go on there to publish because I'm like, and then it doesn't allow you to schedule stuff. So I'd have to like go on there once a day. And it was like, it seems like such simple things, but it's, I really should have a content manager, but I don't.
What do you think about, you may or may not have heard of it, but the CEO of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, just released the new update. I think it was yesterday, about the copying other people's content, the accounts that,
Right.
I don't know if it's repost or just straight up steal other people's content, which I think also goes for the repost pages, that they're no longer going to push their content. In fact, they're going to try and link it back. Sorry?
Is it for reposting?
Not for like, if you were to grab someone else's, okay, like, how those, let's say like a motivation page will grab maybe one of your reels where you're giving a motivational bit, and they'll grab it and they'll put it on their page, and they're going to be driving that traffic away. I'm not sure to the extent that they're going to be doing it. Because, for example, we just did the 30 days of viral content ideas for 30 niches. And we were using other people's content, but we weren't like ripping it off per se. We were more so presenting it as creative ways of thinking about how you can approach content.
Yeah.
So
You're appropriating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but in a way,
fine.
I think, I'm not sure what they're going to be doing with that. If they are moving all that traffic back to the original creator, and that's going to change.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I've not seen that, but I mean, if there is a way to do, I'm not sure how logistically they would do that, but if there is a way to do that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's going to be part of the algorithm.
So little of my content gets reposted these days because it's so specific to me. So it's not really going to affect me. But yeah, that's cool. I mean, even back in the day when I was a photographer, that was such a massive thing. Like I remember there's a funny story where there's one photo and it still gets reposted. Like still to this day gets reposted on Facebook and stuff. And this was like, I shot this photo in 2018. It went mega viral. Like it's now a place in Australia that was like completely untouched, and now there's like lines of cars to get into this beach every single day, and they only let a certain amount of people in and stuff. So I don't want to claim that was me, but it was pretty big. And if you actually Google my name, I think it's the first thing that comes up if you go to images. If you Google my name, it's like on that page, it's like, it kind of looks like there's a shark in the sky and it's like a beach in Australia. There's a bunch of those beaches, but yeah, it's just like those ocean photography spots. And anyway, I posted one of them and it went mega viral, insanely viral.
Wow.
Yeah, this is not even my ocean tropics. There's no mention of me. It's just somehow the copyright's gotten back to me from a Google search. Anyway, that photo still gets posted, but Paris Jackson posted it and just didn't tag me. She just goes, wow, incredible beach from Australia. And I had like 10,000 followers at the time. She had like 20 million, like Michael Jackson's daughter. And I was like, there was nothing I could do because she like disabled comments as soon as she started getting a bunch of comments from people, and then just like didn't do anything. And I was like, that could have been like a life-changing moment for my career, but she just chose to rip the photo and post it, and that was it. So yeah, and that photo still gets, to this day, I'll see something pop up on Facebook that's like Tom Noske photo of Hymes Beach in Australia. It's like happens all the time. You'd think for a photo that was that popular, I would have been able to, turn that into a career. But if that's something that can be beneficial for some creators that have very particularly repostable content, then that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So here it actually says on the creators page, when we find 2 or more identical pieces of content on Instagram, we will only recommend the original one.
Interesting.
Because I did see somebody recently use one of your reels to make an example of something else. And I guess that maybe that wouldn't really count if...
No, that would be That would more be like, that's kind of like reaction stuff, which is
Okay,
totally
yeah,
fair.
that's more fair.
As long as you credit, I think that's the main thing, as long as you're not using it as your own. So
Yeah, of course.
Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Camera or iPhone?
Camera.
Delegate your socials or do it all yourself?
If I had to pick, do it all myself.
Carousels or reels?
Reels.
Early mornings or late nights?
Early mornings.
Hire an editor or edit yourself?
Hire an editor.
Do you drink?
Not much. I do, but not a lot.
Okay. So just to contextualize this question, beer or liquor?
Depends what situation. I love an old fashioned. But I also love a craft beer. I couldn't pick. I don't think I could pick between those two. It's so contextual to the situation.
Definitely. Favorite
Like if I'm
craft
watching a movie,
beer.
if I'm favorite craft beer. Well, I don't know how many of your audience will know this, but there's a company called Balter in Australia. Which Australia has an amazing culture of craft beers. We have some amazing craft beers.
so does Canada, actually. I would say.
Yeah,
My favorite is Fat Yak. Have you tried that?
Surprised. What is it?
Fat Yak?
Fat Yak.
I think it's
I
like
think
a green
Fat Yak is
label
here.
with it's got like an animal at the front, like the face.
This is Australia?
Yeah.
Yes. It's an IPA and it's delicious.
I don't think I've had that one, but I think Fat Yak have another drink, which I remember from when I was a kid. It was like, you could buy it and it's like a liter of like cider and it was fucking disgusting, but it was like $6. So all the kids would get drunk off Fat Yak or
That's like
whatever it was.
oldie
I think it
here.
was Fat Yak. Yeah, it was like similar sort of vibe to, do you know like Goon wine? Like wine in a bag?
The worst
Yeah.
experience of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Similar experience to like Goon in Australia.
Favorite team sport?
I don't know. I guess football, Australian rules football, but I'm actually not a big sport watching person.
To play.
I actually don't. Yeah, I don't play any team sports anymore, but I like competing in like Ironmans and stuff, but I don't like watching sport. I don't know why. I think the only sports I really watch are like motorsport.
Okay.
Like I watch like F1 supercars here in Australia. I watch a little bit of Indy cars.
But if your mates were to go like, hey Tom, let's go play a sport this afternoon.
Aussie rules football.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
How's
AFL.
your rules?
Yeah.
Did you play that in school or like
I did.
back in the day?
I did play when I was younger. Yeah.
I wish they had that in North America. It seems like a fun sport.
It is fun.
Favorite food?
Steak.
Steak.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think you guys can shake on that.
Yeah, we had steak today too. Delicious.
I'm about to after this.
Nice. Awesome.
And then the last one is not necessarily a hot seat one.
Yeah.
You'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. We'll wrap it up. So what's next for you, Tom?
I don't know at the moment. Just continuing to build. I just want to grow my personal brand, like I said, as big as humanly possible. So just continuing to do that, and that's primarily the goal. But then also on the business side of things, like, you know, I really want to continue to scale this as big as I can and turn Time to Build into, you know, it's crazy. Time to Build was just a random name I came up with for a workshop I was running, and now it's like this massive business. So I really want to build it into something that has some staying power. I think it'd be cool to bring some more teachers on and turn it into a bigger thing than just me, because I think it does, you know, it has the capacity to help people, you know, do the same thing that I've been able to do, which is really exciting. So yeah, for me, it's just grow that as big as humanly possible.
Awesome. Well, can't wait to see, you know, where you take it, what you get up to.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was great to see the growth and the changes from cohort 5 to cohort 6. So I can only
Yeah, it was a big
imagine
one.
what the future is going to hold for Time to Build and how you're going to be taking that into
That was
bigger,
a big one.
more amazing growth. Cool.
All
Amazing.
right. Well, We will drop all of your socials in the description for everyone to, whoever doesn't know you yet, who follows us.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and appreciate what you're doing for the creative community and how you're helping enrich people's lives by teaching them the things that they need to know to really leverage their skill as creators and get the most out of the what they do, of their passion, right? Through building their personal brand. So thanks for getting on this podcast. Really appreciate you, man.
Of course. Stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Actually, I did have one follow-up question on the what's next for you. In terms of like a community, maybe like a public community, is that something that you would ever consider doing or consider doing?
All right.
Like a paid public community?
Paid or unpaid, just the community.
I don't know. I've thought about, so Time to Build is going through some changes at the moment, which are potentially going to introduce more of a regular thing. So the program will still stay the same for the 6 weeks, but then the 6 weeks won't end and it'll just continue on a lower capacity, obviously not 5 times a week, but for a monthly fee that we're thinking about doing. So there's that as an option. And that'll be, that's not going to be crazy expensive. It'll be, affordable for everyone who's already in the program. But the only way to get there is by doing the program first. It won't be accessible to people outside the program. As far as a community, I'm kind of like, I'm fiercely protective of my time. Because you've got so little time. And then also just like, I think a lot of people can get stuck doing things because it's a good opportunity without thinking about the consequences on their life. And I've kind of very intentionally built, like, I love the launch model, 1, because it's a great business model, but then 2, it allows me to have some downtime. Like it allows me to actually like switch off for a little bit and go on a holiday and it not destroy my business. Whereas I think this whole thing of like school communities, I don't think people fully understand, like you've signed yourself up, especially if you do like one of these communities where really, if you want to have a successful community, it needs to have weekly calls. You can't have a successful community without weekly calls. When are you going to have a holiday? When are you going to have some time off? What's going to happen? And also like people are like, well, you can set the expectation. You can tell people in your community that you're going on a holiday and you'll be back in 2 weeks. But that doesn't mean that people aren't just going to go, okay, well, I'm done paying. Like that's fully up to them. So is what kind of health consequences or mental health consequences are going to happen if every time you go on a holiday, you lose thousands of dollars? Like what kind of consequences is that going to have on your relationships, on your life and everything that you want to do? Even in Time to Build right now, like we're aiming to do 4 a year. And even that is way too much. Like I wanted to race an Ironman in June and I can't. I fully can't do it because of Time to Build. And it's like, I'm happy to make that sacrifice right now, but how long am I going to be willing to make that sacrifice?
Right.
Like,
you're not getting any younger, right?
Yeah, I'm not getting any younger. So
well, you're still really young though, so you're good.
But it's like, maybe 3 is the maximum. And it's like, okay, well, how does that influence the rest of my business? And I think a lot of, again, back to this thing, you've really got to think about how the business model you choose impacts your ability to live the life that you want. And I think so many people don't ever consider like, what's going to make me happy as far as my whole life? Like, how much do I work? Where do I work? Who do I work with? What do I work on? Like really think about these questions and then build a business within those boundaries. Don't just build a business and then hope it works for your lifestyle. Again, back to the longevity thing. It's like, if I'm able to build my business to the level I want, but also race an Ironman every year, I can do this for the rest of my life. But if at any point I can't do both of those things, then maybe I'm going to have to, the chickens are going to come home to roost, so to say, if I leave either of those options 2 in the open.
Yeah. So just being really intentional with your time. I respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just don't think, I'd rather make more content than invest my time in like, a community or something like that. But that's, that's not for everyone. That's just me. It's the same reason I don't, I'm really bad at answering comments, not because I don't want to. I would love to, but I don't have 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours every day that I can try and get to everyone.
Because it's blocked in your phone.
It's also blocked on my phone. I sometimes jump in on desktop. I sometimes for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I'll just set a timer and go in and try and answer as many as I can.
Yeah.
And that's good. But yeah, it's just not, sustainable.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. Well, that's all we've got for you tonight or today for you.
Tonight for us.
Thanks again for being here. Really appreciate you.
Pleasure.
And hopefully keep in touch.
Of course. Beautiful. Thanks for having me, guys.